My parents cut me off after I paid their mortgage for years, then tried claiming my inheritance. So I let the bank take their precious house away. I've always believed that family comes before everything. Maybe it's because I grew up watching my parents struggle, always behind on bills, juggling overdue notices, and whispering late at night about how much longer we can hold out. We were the kind of family that counted coins for gas money. So when I finally landed a stable job at 26, making more than my dad ever did, I promised myself one thing: they'd never have to worry about losing the house again. I still remember my mom's voice when I told her I'd help with the mortgage. "Oh, honey, you're our saving grace." My dad just nodded, eyes misty, the kind of pride that made my chest ache. Every transfer I made felt like love in motion. I didn't buy myself new clothes or upgrade my car. I sent every spare dollar home. I told myself it was what good sons do. Sometimes when I'd visit, I'd catch my mom humming in the kitchen, her shoulders a little lighter. My dad would slap my back and say, "You're the man of the house now." I laughed it off then, thinking it was just his way of showing gratitude. But deep down, there was a quiet satisfaction, a belief that I was holding my family together. I remember one night, sitting alone in my small apartment after sending another payment, feeling proud but strangely empty. My friends were out celebrating promotions, buying houses, traveling. I told myself my time would come later. Family first, always. If someone had told me then that this loyalty, this blind faith in blood, would one day destroy everything I believed in, I would have laughed. But back then, I didn't know how easily love can turn into leverage, and gratitude into guilt. The first few months of helping out felt good. My parents called every week to thank me, and I could hear the relief in their voices. The late fees stopped piling up, the power never got cut again, and for the first time in years they talked about finally breathing easy. I told myself it was temporary, just until they caught up. But temporary has a way of becoming permanent when guilt wears a friendly face. Soon, the tone of their calls changed. Instead of "thank you, son," it became, "Hey, could you send a little extra? We had to fix the washing machine," or "the car's been acting up again." At first, I didn't think much of it. Family helps family, right? But then I noticed the small things: new curtains, a fancy coffee maker, fresh paint on the porch. My mom even posted about a weekend getaway on Facebook with the caption, "We deserve a little luxury." One evening, I called to ask about it. My mom sighed like I'd hurt her feelings. "We've been so stressed, sweetheart. Can't we enjoy a little peace for once?" My dad chimed in, half laughing. "You worry too much, son. You make good money. Don't act like you're struggling." That hit harder than I expected. I wasn't struggling, but I wasn't living either. My apartment was bare, my meals cheap, my savings non-existent. Still, I kept telling myself, they've sacrificed everything for me. I owe them this. The months bled into years. Each paycheck vanished before I could blink, half of it wired to their account. My coworkers joked about my mystery expenses. I smiled through it, but the truth was sinking in. My parents weren't getting back on their feet. They just found a new crutch, and deep down a quiet fear started whispering. What if they never planned to stand on their own again? Just when I thought I had a handle on things, Chloe came back. My younger sister, the so-called golden child, had spent years abroad, traveling, working odd jobs, living without a care. And now she was back, stepping into the house like it had always been hers. My parents lit up when they saw her, like a switch had flipped. Suddenly, I was invisible, just the guy who paid the bills. She bragged about her trips, her new friends, and even a little apartment she was renting. My parents nodded at every word, laughing, praising, cooing, the same way they never did for me. I tried to joke about it. "Glad you had fun, Chloe, so what's your plan now?" She shrugged, smiling like she was untouchable. "Oh, I'll figure something out. Don't worry about me." But I could see it in my parents' eyes. They were already comparing me to her. "Why can't you be more like Chloe?" my dad muttered one night after she left the kitchen. My mom's smile tightened. Even in casual conversation, her voice carried the subtle judgment I'd felt for years. The unspoken message, "You're never enough." I sat in my apartment that night, staring at my phone, realizing that my sacrifices weren't celebrated. They were taken for granted. And here was Chloe sliding back into privilege effortlessly. My loyalty had made me the dependable one, the financial safety net. While she got to coast through life unbothered, I wanted to be happy for her, but I couldn't. And worse, I felt the first stirrings of resentment, that slow, bitter burn that comes when fairness doesn't exist. I told myself it was temporary, that she'd have to contribute soon. But my gut told me otherwise. This was the beginning of something much larger, and it wasn't going to end nicely. It hit me one afternoon, like a punch I didn't see coming. I drove over to check on the house, the one I'd been keeping afloat for years, only to find balloons, decorations, and Chloe's friends milling around the living room. They were celebrating her birthday, a lavish, Instagram-worthy party, paid for with money I had been sending home every month. My stomach sank. Every dollar I'd sacrificed, every skipped night out, every overtime shift. And this was what it was funding. I tried to confront my parents, my voice trembling more from disbelief than anger. Mom, Dad, did I miss something? Where's this money coming from? My mom's eyes flashed, a mix of irritation and defensiveness. It's all family money, honey. Don't be so dramatic. My dad waved me off, barely meeting my eyes. Lighten up, son. She's your sister. We're all family here. I laughed bitterly, the kind of laugh that tastes like defeat. Family money? The money I had been sending for years was supposed to keep the roof over our heads, not fund weekend getaways and parties for the golden child. I felt something inside me snap, a combination of betrayal, exhaustion, and the quiet realization that my loyalty was being weaponized. That night, I sat alone on my couch, staring at my bank statements and the party pictures my mom proudly shared. My hands shook as I ran through every transfer I had made over the past few years. It wasn't just money. It was my trust, my sacrifice, my sense of being valued, and they had treated it like an endless resource. For the first time, I wondered if pulling back might be the only way to regain some control. But even as the thought formed, a pit of guilt grew in my chest. I had always believed family deserved everything, and now, I had to question everything I thought I knew about mine. I made the decision slowly, painfully, like ripping a bandage off a wound that had festered for years. I stopped sending money. Just like that, no transfer, no explanation at first. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that they'd understand eventually. But the silence on the other end of the line was deafening. My parents called every day at first, their voices strained with panic and hurt. Why aren't you helping us anymore? My mom asked, her tone sharp, bordering on accusation. I need to think, Mom. I've been carrying this for years, I said, my own voice shaking. Think? My dad barked through the line. After everything we've done for you? You're abandoning us? Their words stung more than I expected. All those late nights working extra shifts, all the sacrifices I'd made, suddenly meant nothing. My sister Chloe, of course, sided with them, casually throwing in comments like, "You're really being dramatic. It's just money. Stop making a scene." It was like a dagger twisting in my chest. I tried to explain, to show them the math, the years of payments that had kept the house afloat. But they weren't listening. Instead, the calls stopped altogether. I became a ghost in my own family, the ungrateful son who refused to bend to their will. I felt a heavy weight of guilt settle over me. Nights were the worst when silence replaced their constant demands, and I wondered if I'd crossed a line too far. Did my sense of self-preservation justify turning my back on my parents? Or was I betraying the very principles I had been raised to honor? Yet, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a strange sense of clarity emerged. I realized that for years, I had been complicit in a system where my loyalty was currency, and now, by stepping away, I was reclaiming a small piece of myself. But I knew deep down that this was only the beginning. The storm hadn't even hit yet, and the repercussions were about to get much, much worse. I had been avoiding my family for weeks when an uncle called me out of the blue. His tone was hesitant, almost guilty. "Listen, I don't know how to tell you this, but your grandfather left you something. An inheritance. It was meant for you." My heart stopped. Me, an inheritance? I had assumed any family money went straight to my parents years ago, to cover bills and the mortgage I'd been paying myself. I don't understand, I stammered. "Yeah, neither did I at first," he said. "Apparently they never mentioned it. It was supposed to help you get on your own 2 feet, but, well, they used it to pay off the house years ago." Everything hit me like a freight train. All those nights crunching numbers, skipping dinners with friends, living paycheck to paycheck, just to keep a house that was technically already mine. My sacrifices, my loyalty, my blood and sweat, they had been funding my parents' security, while they deliberately kept me in the dark. I felt a swirl of emotions, disbelief, anger, and a profound sense of betrayal. My chest tightened, stomach knotting in a way I hadn't felt since I was a teenager being told I was never enough. I thought I understood my family, the struggles we had shared, the mutual respect that supposedly bound us. But this was something else. I sat on my couch for hours, staring at the wall, replaying every payment, every thank you call, every moment I'd been lauded as the dutiful son. It wasn't gratitude I'd been receiving. It was control. They had stripped me of knowledge, of opportunity, of the chance to use what was rightfully mine. And for the first time, a plan began forming in my mind. Quiet, deliberate, cold. I realized I didn't have to beg or fight or plead to reclaim what I'd lost. The house, the money, the leverage, it had always been in my hands, whether they knew it or not. I confronted them the next weekend, trying to mask the anger I felt boiling beneath the surface. My hands shook as I slid the inheritance documents. Across the table, each page a reminder of years stolen from me. "Did you know about this?" I asked, voice tight. My mom's face paled, her eyes darting nervously. My dad's jaw tightened like he'd been caught in a lie. We thought it was for the house," my dad stammered, a weak excuse. And then Chloe laughed, that high-pitched, carefree laugh that had always cut deeper than any insult. "Wow, you really think you're owed something? It's not like you'd ever do anything with it anyway." It was in that moment that I understood the full scope of their manipulation. This wasn't about money, it was about control. They had used my loyalty, my work, my sacrifices, to secure their comfort and privilege. Chloe had been groomed to glide through life untouched while I carried the weight of the family's financial struggles. The betrayal stung like a physical blow. All those years of dedication, of unquestioning service, had been a tool for them to assert dominance over me. The house, the inheritance, my sense of self, it was all a lever, and I had been trapped under its weight. As I left the house that evening, cold air biting my cheeks, I felt something shift inside me. The part of me that wanted to argue, to beg for fairness, began to die. I realized I didn't need their approval, their gratitude, or even their love. What I needed was control, not theirs, but my own. For the first time in years, I let the anger settle like ice in my veins. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just looked at them and understood. My empathy had been weaponized, my kindness exploited. And now it was time to plan, quietly, deliberately, and without remorse. I didn't act immediately. I didn't storm in screaming or demand my rights. Instead, I let the world keep turning while I observed. Every mortgage notice, every utility bill, every casual conversation about our family home became a puzzle piece in my mind. I realized the house, the one I had been keeping afloat for years, was still technically under my name because of the inheritance. The power had always been mine, I just hadn't used it yet. I began deliberately spacing out the mortgage payments, letting late notices accumulate. I could feel my parents' anxiety ripple through every phone call they tried to force me into. "Why haven't you sent the payment?" my mom demanded one night, voice trembling with both fear and anger. I stayed calm, letting the silence stretch before answering. "I'm looking into it." My plan wasn't about money. It wasn't about spite. It was about teaching them, in the quietest, most undeniable way, that I would no longer be their lifeline. Every bill that went unpaid was a subtle statement. Control had shifted. Chloe, of course, had no idea. She still floated through life, oblivious to the consequences her parents had ignored for so long. I watched, feeling a mixture of guilt and satisfaction, as panic slowly crept into their daily routines. They started, calling relatives, begging for advice, fumbling explanations about why our son was refusing to help. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small or guilty or unworthy. I felt seen, in a way they had never allowed me to be. Night after night, I sat in my apartment, the glow of my laptop reflecting in my eyes, calculating, anticipating. Each late notice, each frantic call, each pleading conversation brought me closer to a quiet, precise revenge. It wasn't loud, it wasn't messy, it was inevitable. And I knew that when the house finally slipped from their grasp, there would be no one to blame but themselves. I never imagined my parents would make a scene in front of my coworkers, but that afternoon they did exactly that. They showed up at my office, my mom clutching a crumpled late notice, my dad's face red with fury, and I felt every head in the open plan space swivel to look at us. My manager called me into the hallway while they started shouting about the ungrateful son who's ruining the family. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. The fluorescent lights felt harsh and clinical, like they were exposing some private shame. "You're making a scene," my manager hissed, eyes hot with annoyance. My dad didn't care. "He's the one who stopped the payments. He wants us out on the street," people murmured. Someone took out their phone. Chloe stood there, smiling. The same smug look she always wore, like this was an unfortunate but amusing soap opera. My manager's face shifted from irritation to caution. He pulled me into his office and asked things I wasn't prepared to answer, about reliability, about drama, about whether this would impact my work. I stumbled over words, felt my professionalism crack, and heard a small, awful voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my father. "You owe us." That night, I sat on the kitchen floor of my tiny apartment with takeout noodles gone cold beside me and felt something entirely new, complete, crushing loneliness. The people you'd expect to defend you had allied against you. My phone was full of missed calls, some from family, some from HR, and my reflection in the window looked like a stranger. I replayed the scene until it hollowed me out. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but there was no one I trusted to pick up. The anger that had been steady and hot now turned into a hollow ache. I traded security for principle and ended up losing both. I curled into bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking maybe I'd gone too far. Then my email pinged, a subject line that made my stomach drop. The email was from the bank. The foreclosure process had officially begun. My parents had no idea how to respond. My chest tightened as I read the notice over and over, the words sinking in slowly. "Your mortgage account is delinquent. Legal action pending." I didn't feel triumph. I felt the cold, heavy weight of inevitability. This was the house I had kept afloat for years, the one they had taken for granted, and now it was slipping from their grasp entirely. The calls started immediately. My mother screamed into the phone, each word sharp and desperate. "How could you do this? This is our home. We raised you." I kept my voice calm, even as my heart thudded. "You said it yourself. You raised me to be responsible. I just let the process run its course." Chloe called too, trying that same smirk, the same casual indifference, hoping to guilt me into reversing course. "Come on, it's just a house. Stop acting like this is a war." I let silence fill the line. No reassurance, no explanation. Just the knowledge that this time, it wasn't about money. It was about consequences. I drove past the house that evening, the sun setting behind it, casting long shadows over the lawn I had helped maintain for years. The windows were dark, the decorations gone, the yard eerily quiet. My parents were inside, pacing, panicking, powerless. For the first time, they realized that loyalty and sacrifice could not be taken for granted. Their sense of control had evaporated, and there was no one to blame but themselves. I didn't feel glee, not really. I felt calm. I had watched, waited, and allowed the natural consequences of their choices to unfold. Sometimes revenge isn't about shouting or confrontation. It's about letting people live with the results of their own actions. And as I turned away from the house, the cool evening air brushing my face, I finally felt a strange, quiet satisfaction. Not from the loss they faced, but from the peace I had reclaimed. It didn't take long for word to spread. Relatives, neighbors, even old family friends began murmuring about the foreclosure. My parents scrambled to explain themselves, spinning stories about their ungrateful son who had abandoned them. But the truth was out there, in black and white. Legal documents, bank notices, inheritance records. It wasn't manipulation. It wasn't exaggeration. It was undeniable. Family gatherings turned icy. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years started taking sides. Some called me cold. Others whispered that my parents had been exploitative for years. Chloe, of course, tried to spin it in her favor, but the truth had a momentum of its own. Every explanation she offered only made her parents look worse, like accomplices to a long pattern of exploitation. "You can't just take this from us," my mom whispered to me at a relative's house, voice trembling but full of panic. "I didn't take anything," I replied quietly. "You built this on your choices. I just let it happen." The sense of validation was overwhelming. For years I had been silenced, my sacrifices ignored, my voice dismissed. Now, people were seeing the story from my perspective. The very leverage my parents had tried to use against me had reversed. They were powerless witnesses to the consequences of their own decisions. I watched them in social settings, awkward, embarrassed, their image tarnished. The parents who once projected control and authority now looked small, defeated. Chloe tried to shield them, but the cracks were visible, the irony sharp. All those years of manipulation, all the guilt they had imposed, had come crashing back, not in anger, not in my hands, but in the undeniable reality they had created themselves, and for the first time in a long time. I felt free, not just from financial burden, but from the invisible chains of family obligation that had weighed me down for years. I didn't gloat. I didn't call or text or rub their mistakes in their faces. I bought a small apartment with what little I'd managed to save outside of all the years I'd sent home. It was modest, but it was mine, the first real space I had ever truly owned. Walking through the empty rooms, sunlight spilling across the wooden floor, I felt a strange lightness, a quiet relief. No one to demand, no one to judge, no one to manipulate me with guilt or expectation. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the house I let slip from their hands. I remember the panic in my mom's voice, my dad's futile attempts at anger, Chloe's smug little face, and I feel a sharp, undeniable satisfaction, not from revenge itself, but from finally letting go. Their choices, their entitlement, their favoritism, all of it came crashing down on them without me lifting a finger. I had simply allowed reality to run its course. I still feel the echoes of guilt, the soft whispers of what-ifs, but they no longer weigh me down. Freedom tastes strange at first, unfamiliar but intoxicating. I don't need approval, validation, or permission anymore. I am the one in control, and that alone is powerful. I've learned that love and loyalty can be exploited, and generosity can be weaponized. But patience, observation, and letting people live with their choices can deliver a justice far more satisfying than anger or confrontation. I walk my apartment each morning with quiet pride, knowing I no longer owe anyone anything. Not my parents, not Chloe, not even myself in the old ways I used to believe. Sometimes I catch myself smiling at the memory of that final phone call, the one where panic replaced pride, where desperation replaced control. I don't feel cruel. I feel liberated. And for the first time in decades, I understand what it means to truly prioritize myself. Sometimes the best justice is letting people live with the mess they created.